My Energy Future Meet the STEM Hero webinar series. I'm here this morning with Mallory Schaefer, who works at the Energy Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do at the Energy Coalition?
Yeah, so I'm a project coordinator at the Energy Coalition, and that can mean a bunch of different things, but basically I help enroll public agencies into our energy savings program. I also work on the education and training team, which I really enjoy. I work with some local government partnerships, which is also really interesting. And I do a whole bunch of other stuff, but the main chunk of my work goes to helping enroll public agencies like school districts and things like that into our energy savings program. Yeah, so before tech, I worked at a couple different nonprofits. So the first one that I worked at was a STEM nonprofit, and we helped pretty much anyone, students in school, adults, anyone who's interested in STEM, get connected to different STEM resources in our community. And then before that, I worked at an off-the-grid K-8 school, right, probably like 5 miles south of the border of the Navajo Reservation. So the majority of the students we served were Native American, and they incorporated a lot of traditional teachings into the school. So it was a really, really cool place to work. It was completely off-grid. And when I worked there, I was the STEM coordinator. So I ended up creating a STEM lab and creating an aquaponic system and things like that. And then before that, I worked for about 4 years at a Girl Scout camp where I really got into like outdoor education. I like working at tech right now because we are able to help public agencies like school districts and schools and cities reach their energy goals, which is really important in order to have a healthy climate.
That's great. Yeah. Where did you get started in all this?
Yeah, so I moved in the middle of 5th grade, which is a really rough time to move, from Sparks, Nevada, which is a pretty small town near Reno, Nevada, which is by Lake Tahoe for some like geographical context. So it's more up north. We moved to Phoenix, and it's a completely different climate. It's the desert. It's really hot. There's no snow. I didn't know anyone, so it was kind of a rough start. So for the middle of 5th grade, but I ended up loving Phoenix. I really, for a while I didn't really enjoy it very much, but I ended up really, really loving it. I think the desert is a beautiful place to be and spend time in. I grew up with my mom and my dad. My mom is a real estate agent still, and then my dad works in IT. Neither of those things were really ever very interesting to me. So I didn't really get super interested in my career path from either of them, but they definitely were very supportive of the path that I wanted to go down. I lived really close to a nature preserve, which is actually pictured here. It's called South Mountain. I spent a ton of time there hiking and just being in nature, and I really think that kind of helped solidify that I wanted to work in some kind of environmental related field.
So what are some of the things you like to do when you're not working as a project coordinator?
Yeah, so the main thing I love to do is bake. I think it's super fun. It's a good way to de-stress just by like making some cookies or something, or it's also a good way to challenge yourself if you are baking something that is kind of complex. It's a good way to, kind of like get some skills, and like a lot of times you have to be really patient. So I think it's just really fun. I think the part that I love the most is decorating. So this is actually, there's a picture of a birthday cake that I made one of my friends for their birthday. And I made it all from scratch, and I was super proud of myself. It's a chocolate strawberry cake. And then I also love thrifting. So I think it's a really good way to kind of reuse clothes, give things a second use, or even I thrift a lot of like mugs or plates, things like that. I think it's really fun to be able to like find some really like cool kind of like weird stuff sometimes. So I spend a good amount of time doing that.
Just for those who might not be aware, what is thrifting?
Yeah, so if you have any stores near you that sell like donated items, so if you have some old shirts or some like a bike or something that you don't really use anymore, a lot of times you can donate it to places like Savers or more local shops. And so you can then go and shop at those places. All the clothes there are able to, they're still in good condition, things like that.
What else? What are some other things you did?
Yeah, so in high school, I was in technical theater and I created costumes, helped design sets, and did stage makeup. We ended up doing the show Hairspray, which was really cool. And I was able to make a bunch of the council girl dresses. So the girls who are singing in the show. So I made a bunch of those dresses, and it was really, really cool to be able to see something that I created on stage. I really love doing technical theater. I think it's really cool if you're interested in theater, but you don't necessarily want to act. It's a good way to still be involved.
Good
And
tip.
then, like I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time hiking in the desert, which really made me love that environment.
So where'd you go to school?
So I went to school at Northern Arizona University, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona. So it's up north in Arizona. It actually snows there. A lot of people don't think that it snows in Arizona, but it does. It can get pretty cold. I graduated in December 2016 with a degree in environmental and sustainability studies and a minor in sustainable community development. I was also part of a service sorority there called Omega Phi Alpha. And so that also I always really enjoyed doing community service. And so to be able to join an organization that was literally just focused on community service was really cool. While I was in school, I also worked at the Girl Scout camp, which again really helped me discover my passion for environmental and outdoor education. I want other people to experience nature and love it as much as I do. So I really enjoy teaching outdoors and promoting good environmental skills and ideals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious, how does that tie in with sustainable community development? Could you say a little bit more about like what you actually studied, what those two things mean?
Yeah, so for sustainable community development, I decided to take it on as a minor because a lot of the classes I was already taking for my major kind of went along with that minor. So I ended up taking a lot of planning classes. And so in that major or in that minor, I learned a lot about designing communities that are green and like very user friendly. So that means like a city being green really just means that it gets its energy from a reusable source. There is a lot of public transit. There's a lot of like ways to be able to get around other than driving your car. And then I also learned a lot about sustainable tourism, which is also incredibly important. And so that kind of got me interested in working for an organization like Tech, where we help public agencies kind of become more sustainable.
So, in order to get to where you are now, what are some of the things that you had to learn?
So when I graduated, I didn't really feel like I had the experience to get the kind of job that I wanted. And so I felt kind of discouraged. So I was looking into some like other options. So I ended up hearing about AmeriCorps. And I applied to a few different AmeriCorps programs. And AmeriCorps is very similar to the Peace Corps, if you've heard of that, but it's based in the United States. So it's just a community volunteer program essentially, but you get a living stipend and you get placed with an organization where you're able to kind of learn the ins and outs of that organization while gaining some of that experience that you may feel like you need. So I decided to sign up for the AmeriCorps VISTA program, which VISTA just stands for Volunteers in Service to America. And that is where I learned a lot of valuable skills. So both of those jobs, it was the STEM nonprofit that I worked at, and then the K-8 school. So I did 2 years of AmeriCorps VISTA because I just loved it so much. So some of the skills that I learned, I would say the three most important were flexibility for sure. In AmeriCorps, things can change very quickly. And at the sites I was working at, things were kind of never really set in stone. The next would be being proactive. So there were times where I felt like I didn't really have that much work to do, So, and I knew that there was still work to do. So I would always be checking in with my supervisor just to make sure that I was getting things done and that there wasn't anything else that they needed help with, or maybe there were more things that they needed help with. And then learning on the fly. So just being able to, if you don't know something, asking for assistance. And then when whoever is teaching you is kind of going over it, just really being able to pay attention and follow those instructions.
So if you had some advice, what might you tell them?
Yeah, so I would say that you don't have to know what you're passionate about from a young age. Feel free to explore your hobbies and interests. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in middle school, but because I spent so much time in nature, that really kind of helped me realize that I wanted to have an environmental job. So if you have a hobby or something that you're really interested in, maybe you could think of careers that have to do with that hobby. I would also say utilize your network, so your friends and your family, and if you do currently have a job, which if you're in middle school, you probably do not, but maybe if you're in high school, you might. So your coworkers as well. So I realized that people in my network really wanted to help me succeed. And so being able to talk to them and have them help me through some things was really, really valuable. And then I would also say learn how to bake because it's fun and it's rewarding.
Absolutely. We have a question from one of our guests in the audience about your love of deserts. They're really curious what you think is going to happen to the deserts in the future with climate change coming.
You know, if we kind of continue down the path that we're going at, things are probably not going to look very good for the desert. I think it's going to get way too hot. And so what's going to happen is all the animals that live in the desert are going to start moving up in elevation where it is slightly cooler. And so as things start to heat up, higher elevations are going to become hotter. And then the animals that live in those higher elevations are going to have to go even higher. And so it'll be a whole chain reaction of climate zones getting hotter and animals moving out of those climate zones into new climate zones. And that could also cause a lot of animals to become endangered or go extinct. So I think in order for us to save our deserts, we really need to get serious about climate change and enact policies that are going to help with climate change and take little everyday actions like maybe recycling or not using a plastic water bottle, or thrifting. Thrifting is a good example in order to save our precious deserts.
Yeah, thank you. I know you mentioned that you work with public schools, and I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you're helping public schools get better around climate change?
One of the ways is we are working with Anaheim Public Utilities, and they actually help put solar panels onto certain schools in Anaheim. So we partner with them to educate the students at those schools about solar panels and about renewable energy. So we're actually hands-on in the classroom teaching about renewable energy. One of the lessons we did, the students got to make their own solar cars, which is really cool because it's like a mini solar panel and they actually can see it work in real time and hold it and play with it. So that's one of the ways. Another way would be we help public agencies, so like school districts as a whole or schools, retrofit all of their lighting so that they use better light bulbs in their classrooms and on their school campuses, things like that. Or even things such as replacing hot water heaters to be more efficient.
And just in case anyone listening hasn't heard, what's the deal with being energy efficient? Why is that so important right now?
Yeah, so if you're energy efficient and you are using renewable sources of energy or you're using less energy, that essentially means that you're using less greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases are kind of what is a big factor in climate change. They stay in the atmosphere and make things warmer. So if you are becoming more energy efficient, you are cutting down on that greenhouse gas use. And so you're not emitting as much into the atmosphere.
I see. So by helping out public schools with their lighting and with their hot water, you're allowing them to use less energy, and then which emits less greenhouse gases.
Exactly.
Well, that's all the questions I have for today, Mallory. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.